Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Virgo, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of March 2025. I hope you're well. I'm using the Llewellyn Tarot for you today. This is actually packed up and I pulled it out of a box a couple of days ago. And it was very strong, like it wanted to be used. So, I hope you're well. I've said that already. Yes. So before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's one of the links in the description box below. It's to Selfie, because we're moving away from Vimeo because of their inappropriate behaviour, let's put it that way. Although I have heard that they've walked that back somewhat, but you know, damage has been done, trust has been broken, so yeah. All seems to be going well with Selfie. I would appreciate, again, any feedback that you might have. We did have some teething problems, but I was luckily in a position to be able to rectify that for people in a way that I could never do with Vimeo to the same extent. So stick with it again for this month and see how it goes. Obviously, Circle is still an option for anybody who wants to join us over there, and there's lots of classes and all sorts of things that are going on. So if that's something that might be of interest to you, the link is also in the description box below. Now, let's get on with this here, Virgo, because I did, obviously, before I start any reading, I do a short meditation. And what came through for you was curtains, which I think is hysterically funny because whether you were aware or not, there is a lunar eclipse happening in your sign on the 14th of March. Now, lunar eclipses are associated with endings of sorts, all sorts. Isn't necessarily immediately obvious, though. I mean, sometimes it can be very sudden and there's an ending right there, but the consequences of that ending can take quite a long time to play out. Now, obviously, this whole month is intense, let's put it that way, and on top of everything else, I think with the transits that we've got going on and the fact that we are entering eclipse season, just for extra shits and giggles with all of the other stuff that's going on, I think by and large it's going to be very, very difficult for us to really understand what is going on. So additionally, you also have the South Node in your sign, so I mean that can be a little bit heavy sometimes. But let's have a look and see what the cards have to say. Can I have 3 cards for Virgo, please? There we are. 2 of Pentacles is the first card out. What about current energy for Virgo, please? Ooh, we have the Magician. I like that. That's a card that represents Virgo as well as Gemini, actually, on account of it being actually associated with Mercury. What's coming towards Virgo, please? 6 of Wands. Interesting. It is quite likely, additionally here with the 9 of Pentacles, which is another Virgo card down here, that rather than this being, you know, awful and dreadful in the way that we would expect something represented by curtains, and actually there was also a point of focus that just sort of zapped out of out of focus. That's probably the best way to put it. It's like it almost represented the Ace of Pentacles and it just zipped off. It's almost like a direction that you thought you were going is not where you are going. But rather than that being a bad thing, that seems to be something that is actually for you very good, because it seems to be clearing some of the noise out of the way. And I cannot tell you how helpful that would be to you this month, with all of the other noise that's going to be going on. To be clear, Venus is in retrograde now at the point that you're watching this, and will be until April the 12th, I think it stations direct, and certainly at least in the first part of that retrograde period we do associate it with potential crises, let's put it that way, but in the second half of the retrograde period it becomes much more clear what the route forward is, and generally it's revolving around what it is that we value. Interesting that we have 2 Pentacles on the table for you, and for me, because Pentacles are energetic currency and they represent what we have to invest and the reasons why we invest in that, right? Because there's some sort of value there. It's interesting that those should have come up. as well as that one being yours. What else do we have? We also have a Mercury retrograde occurring, and that's going to overlap with the Venus retrograde. That can make it considerably more intense, but I think quite helpful, because what Mercury does in that instance is help you process, right? It helps you situate things in your head in the right way. And then we have this lunar eclipse. Now, obviously, not every Virgo is going to have this eclipse happening in the same place, because if you're a Virgo sun watching this, the setup of your houses is going to be very different to a Virgo ascendant who is watching this. So it falls to you to look at your personal birth chart and see which house is ruled by Virgo. That's likely where whatever is being eclipsed out is going to show up in your life. But I would also additionally look into where, which house of yours is ruled by Aries, because there's a lot of activity going on in there at the moment. If you are a Virgo ascendant, Aries rules your 8th house, and that makes that very, very intense. But there's a whole death and rebirth process that tends to occur when anything transits the 8th house. So in terms of potentially eclipsing past issues by way of a deep psychological breakthrough, we could totally see that being what is happening here. Now, let me get some clarifiers out on the table before we get too sidetracked by all of this, because March is a month unlike any you've experienced in your life. And I do think that there is a distinct possibility that what starts here is the next step of human consciousness, right? That's going to be kind of uncomfortable, because we're letting go of a paradigm that is essentially formed the parameters of our existence for as long as we've been alive. But it's freeing us, I do think. Everything's been very stressful for you for months now, Virgo. Let's get some clarifiers out here. 2 of Pentacles. And I think what's being eclipsed out, whether or not it feels comfortable at the point where it's happening, is definitely happening for the right reasons, because you feel to me like you're stretched to a point where snapping is the only thing that is possible. Snapping, releasing, letting go, finish, everything's going. In order for you to work out what is actually most important for you and where you wish to invest your energy moving forwards in a way that you couldn't do before. Tell me about the Magician. Why is the Magician here, please, for Virgo? Right, we have the Page of Wands and we have the Ace of Cups. Incredible. Tell me about the Six of Wands. Got the Three of Pentacles. And we have the Magician again, with the Nine of Cups at the bottom of the deck. Virgo, I'll be honest, of all of the signs, yours was one that I was expecting to have a feel of a rough ride about it, principally because the South Node is in your sign, but also because there's a lunar eclipse in your sign, and these things can be uncomfortable. Lunar eclipse, like I said, it can take months and months, in some instances up to a year, to play out in its totality. But I think things have been so difficult of late, and off the top of my head, I would say from probably about August last year, things have been hard. There's only so much discomfort that we can tolerate within the space that we're in before we decide that actually cost-benefit analysis is kicking in and it's time to move somewhere else, right? And whatever it might be that's restricting that movement actually gets pushed by the wayside, and it's like, no, it's not comfortable to stay where I was anymore, even if that involves some sort of future plan, like what it is that you've been working towards for, gosh, well, if it's August last year, we're talking about 7 months or so. So we start over here with your Two of Pentacles, and this quite simply is my card of coping, right? It's the one card across all the decks that I own that varies the most in its depiction something I noticed a long time ago. Always using the same, structure within the card. So there's always a maelstrom somewhere, and there's somebody in the front who's juggling pentacles. But sometimes people look like they're pulling off these great athletic feats, and they look really, really pleased with the way that they're juggling these two pentacles. In other depictions, such as this one, we have depictions of actual peril. The maelstrom is not far out to sea, far away from us where we can't see it. It is literally at our back. And we are positioned on the end of a jetty, trying to stand on one foot and juggle this, this eternal juggling of pentacles that's going on. And I also think she looks quite distressed. I think it's like, fuck, is it never going to end? It's just going to be like this non-stop. It's exhausting just to look at it, Virgo. And additionally, we have here, the Four of Swords, and we have the Knight of Cups in reverse. Now, this is a card of mental peace when it shows up this way. It's also a card of healing, because obviously it follows on from the Three of Swords. When it shows up in the reverse, it actually talks about that taking a break, taking a step back, that mental peace that is cultivated by way of healing something that was kind of fractured before. Not being where we need to stay anymore. It's like there's no rest, there's no peace, it's all go. There's nothing put aside anywhere for you for restoration. And we see it here in the Knight of Cups in reverse as well. You could read the Knight of Cups as being either a need to withdraw the amount of assistance that you have been giving to another for one reason or another, in terms of self-preservation, because some people need help, but some people well, there's no nice way of putting it really, right? Some people just flounder around in a sea of absolute learned helplessness, and they need other people to be doing things for them all the time rather than taking responsibility for their own shit and doing it themselves. Now, it's not always entirely clear in any given situation, certainly when you first enter it, on what side of the divide that person is falling. But I would say potentially after 6 or 7 months you might have a clear idea of it. Now, that's not for all of you, that's just for some of you. This certainly being a contributory factor to the exhaustion that you're feeling. For others of you, it's like it's feeling almost like you don't have anything else to give. Well, guess it's more or less the same thing, right? But it couldn't be anything else to give to this situation. Maybe feeling like you have nothing in the tank to give yourself. Well, it's kind of circular. These are all more or less the same things, but they'll show up differently in your life. Just absolute exhaustion here, beyond anything else. But we seem to be breaking through something in your current energy. We have the Magician, and obviously it's appearing twice on the table here, so this is very, very strong. And the Magician is about manifestation. It's about the creation of a new reality, right? But it's interesting that it's a card that's ruled by Mercury, because what it says is, yes, you need the aces, you need the elements as represented on the table of the Magician here, but there needs to be something added to that to make it happen, right? And that thing is mercurial in nature. It is a mindset, it is ideas, it is willpower, right? It is the expression of those things mixed with the aces, and you've got one here that is kind of clearing the way for you to see things differently and create in a space what it is that you want to see the world, your personal world, having more of. There's no other way of looking at, somebody who moves from this energy to this energy other than having a massive breakthrough of some sort. Now, at the point that I'm recording this, obviously we're not anywhere near the lunar eclipse yet. Still a good few weeks out, but that energy can start to build for a good few weeks beforehand. So maybe some of you are starting to, move towards whatever the revelation of the eclipse may bring to you already. I wouldn't be surprised about that. Or maybe creating the conditions that within which whatever the lunar eclipse brings will accelerate. We have the Ace of Cups, and I do feel like you've recognised that this is unsustainable and this cannot carry on for much longer, because you have to give something to yourself. And I think there's quite a conscious awareness of where you are depleted and where that needs to be fixed that is going on. So it could be manifesting itself in a very small way, in recognizing that I need an afternoon to myself to do something, anything that isn't directly related to all of the things that have been weighing me down and been so burdensome and causing me to feel so perilous, where I can literally just switch off. Cultivating a small moment in time where you have some space for some self-care. That's entirely possible. It could be that for some of you that this is showing up more as some sort of I know where this is coming from, it's dream revelations about stuff, right? Where your subconscious has put things together and you kind of woken up one morning and gone, okay, I have the solution to this, and it's not resource based. It's absolutely in my emotional stability. It's in my emotional endurance, which is probably has been pushed to the limit of late. Let's get the wild unknown out here. Tell me about the Six of Cups. Whoa, we've got the Strength card. And we've got the Page of Pentacles. I mean, yeah, the Five of Pentacles is at the bottom of the deck here. And I think part of what you've understood, Virgo, is that this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Whatever this is, right? And this could be your life. Could it just simply your life? It is also kind of situating you in the here and now rather than the past and rather than the future. And I think that you've been kind of stricken about trying to get towards the future and whatever the future brings, but it's come at such a cost. Like your petals are literally falling, right? Leading us to make some sort of, oh, well, there you go, right? If it's not a sprint, but a marathon, you need to pace yourself. That's what I heard when the Strength card turned over there. And you have quite simply realized that you're at the point where if you continue to keep trying to sprint, all that's going to happen is you're going to deplete yourself. If you recognize that this is a marathon and actually, the challenges that you've been experiencing are as much, what do we say, right? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Now, popping down to your local Sainsbury's is a very different endeavour to travelling across the world, metaphorically speaking, right? Well, obviously literally as well, but metaphorically speaking. Now, if what you're doing is travelling across the world, you're going to have to be better prepared. You're going to have to pace yourself. You're going to know that you're going to spend a long time in the air or on the road or whatever. And so there needs to be things put in place that can allow you to recoup your energy. The Six of Pentacles is about balance and it's about alignment, but it's also Moon in Taurus, right? So it's talking about the importance of making sure that your emotional state is grounded and balanced and aligned and not in a constant state of depletion, right? So this whole revelation that you've had I think is allowing you to take a slightly different position on what it is that you are trying to manifest, right? Strength and the Page of Pentacles. The Page of Pentacles is a starting point. I mean, maybe what you're doing here is giving yourself permission to be at the starting point. I think one of the things that trips us up quite often is our almost pathological desire to get to the new thing that we're trying to manifest for ourselves, such that every little thing that comes up ends up feeling like an impediment to the reaching of the destination or the achieving of the thing that we're trying to pull off, and not part of the story of how we got there. And the story itself being the thing that is the most important. So the Page of Wands here with the Page of Pentacles actually feels to me like a bit of a step back from the way that you have been doing things. I can't remember if it was last month or the month before, Virgo. It'll have been the month before, because I made a decision last month that I was going to stop putting titles on my videos because I felt like it was it was being prescriptive about the kind of experience that people were having, and I wanted to leave it more open as to what they took from the reading rather than what I thought it was about, right? And the title seemed to be something that got in the way of that, right? So it's just like we're just talking about the energies of the month instead. So it must have been the month before, where I asked you the question of whether everything actually had changed around you while you were still trying to get to a particular destination, right? It's like the environment had changed, the landscape had changed, whether that was in, sense of resources, sense of your emotional landscape, your spiritual landscape, anything, right? All the things that had been fairly static and fairly stable at the point where you started moving in this direction actually had changed, and you were so locked in on still trying to get to the same place that you hadn't really noticed that it had all moved around you, right? So I think it's entirely possible that over the course of January and February, like, what we've had is a recognition of the fact that that is the thing, in fact, that has happened. But still we've been stuck in this cycle of, but I'm still trying to juggle all of the things, and I'm still fucking exhausted, and I don't know how to put something down or step back or do any of those things. When this feels, with these two pages in this ace, this feels to me exactly what you've done. You've stood back and you've gone, do you know what? I can fucking do it a different way. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but this can't be right. This can't be the way that this plays out, because the journey, the story of how we got here, is more important than the destination. What it's saying is it's kind of seated you in the present. I think it's very difficult to manifest when you're either over there or back there somewhere. You have to be absolutely in the present moment. Because you need to be reacting to what actually is in front of you, rather than, let's say you're walking down a woodland path, right, in kind of quite a dense forest or something, right, and you're rushing along, and suddenly, you go round a bend, and in front of you there is a giant fucking boulder, right? Say it comes up to about here on you, right? Or a load of fallen trees, something like that. Now, if you're looking directly ahead at where it is that you're trying to go, which is now kind of glinting in the distance, and not looking down to perceive what is going on here, you're just going to walk into that thing, and you're going to be like, ow, that hurts, it's sharp, it's got, spiky bits on it, it's very, very uncomfortable. If you step back and you look at the thing that has fallen over, the obvious thing is, well, we're going to climb over it, right? And suddenly our walk in the woods has got a lot more interesting than it would have been. We're going to have to clamber over these logs, or we're going to have to clamber over this rock. Maybe we're going to have to go around it, into the dense trees and come back around that way. But you can't do it if you're not looking at what is directly in front of you. This reads to me like you've stopped, you've stood back, you've taken stock. And for some of you, you're wondering if that end destination was where you wanted to go at all. It's starting to look less and less like a good idea, and you're questioning more and more why it was that you thought it was a good idea. But for others of you, you're coming to the conclusion that, yes, this is what I want. And so I'm going to have to change tack somewhat, right? I am now going from simple ambulation to, I need to climb over this fucking rock, or I need to clamber over these logs, And it could be something that actually is quite fun for some of you. But you have to notice that it's there. These say to me that you have noticed it's there. Maybe in the stopping and looking at the fallen logs, or the rock, or whatever it is that is providing the obstacle at this point, you step back and you're going, oh, do you know what? Now would be a really good time for lunch. I can actually feel I'm getting quite tired. I'm feeling a little bit like, I need a rejuvenating cup of coffee from my flask in my rucksack, or a sandwich or something, right? I need to fuel myself before I go any further. That's what this is talking about here. Now, what's coming towards you in March is quite quite unlike what I expected for you, as I said right at the beginning there, right? Because we've got the Six of Wands. The Six of Wands is Jupiter in Leo, and it is generally given to be a card that represents success. It represents the overcoming of challenges, the overcoming of obstacles, such as we saw in the Five of Wands, which is the card that precedes it. Now, the Five of Wands is Saturn in Leo. It is talking about the struggle, the conflict, the strife, whether that is external between you and another or internal. And I think quite often the biggest struggles that we have are internal. It's saying that sometime in March here, you got over the boulder, you got over the pile of logs. And not only did you do it, you had time for a sandwich and a cup of coffee. Because there's something kind of Eight of Swordsy about this here. What's going on in here? Sorry, I pushed it away, you can't see it. And the reason why it's Eight of Swordsy is because, as you will no doubt recall, the meaning of the Eight of Swords is you're never stuck, you're never trapped, you're only ever one decision away from releasing yourself from whatever you are bound to, right? It's the perspective that is locked in that stops us from seeing any other escape route. And now in that card, we have a woman who is blindfolded and she is bound, and she's surrounded by 8 swords, and there's water on the ground as well. And she's just sort of stood there, right? She's frozen, she's static. She doesn't know what to do because there appears to be no release from the bondage. But in that card, it's very carefully depicted that she is very, very loosely bound. So all she needed to do was move her arms a little bit, and she would realise that actually she could get them free, and from there she could take the blindfold off her eyes, and then she could look around, see the swords, move around the swords, and take herself off that soggy place wherever she finds herself, right? Again, sometimes it's puddles on the ground, other times it's literally waves that are coming to knock you over. And so whatever's being revisited or revised here in your head, and I would say it was more about your emotional approach to it, right? Rather than being locked in, going, oh, actually, do you know what I need? I need something here as well, whether it's a sandwich and a cup of coffee, a sit down, take my boots off, shake any stones out of it or whatever. It's like this moment of repose that you have given to yourself was almost like the magic wand that needed to be cast over your situation to show you that you weren't actually as locked into what you had thought you were. Like I said, the Magician, the Ace of Cups, these give us the idea that it's very much in here and here where the problem has lay, not out there. And March seems to be the month where you crack it, right? Where you've done that you needed, you've revitalized yourself, and now you're ready to head into the fray, but feeling much more well equipped for it than you did back here. We have the Magician underneath again, and this almost feels like it's a feedback loop that's feeding each other, right? You cracked it once over here, and now the Magician is sitting underneath and going, in everything that you're dealing with in this moment, what do I need to change? What do I need to create? What do I need to apply my will to? Where do I need to create perspective for myself so that I can be in this state of Six of Wands? We haven't even really talked about these two cards here, but we should maybe bring them in at this point, because the Nine of Pentacles is about your resources. The nines for me generally talk about how you manage whatever suit they represent. So in the case of the Nine of Swords, it is how you manage your mind, or whether your mind is managing you. It's about, fundamentally, about a loss of perspective, where we allow catastrophe and anxiety and all sorts of things to colour our judgment of what is happening right now. In the case of the Nine of Pentacles and the Nine of Cups, what we have is you and your resources, and you and your emotional state. Now, your resources, being Nine of Pentacles, are talking about how you manage things like your time, your energy, your money for certain, your effort, right? Your attention, all of these things. Are these being deployed in such a way that elevates you and moves you on, or are they keeping you restricted? Now, if you've been in a state of exhaustion for such a long time, Virgo, sometimes it's difficult to recognize that that's where we're at. Like we can go, I'm just really tired. But generally, when we're really, really tired, our executive function starts to, well, fuck, what's the word that I'm looking for, right? It's affected. Right. So rather than recognizing what is kind of blindingly obvious, that maybe if we're really, really exhausted, what we need to do is take a break, we go, we're so locked in on where it is that we're trying to go that we go, oh, just got to keep going, just got to keep going. And we actually end up investing everything that we have in the destination, because then the destination becomes the point where everything's all right and we would be allowed to rest. And that's not how it goes if you're trying to pace yourself, if you are trying to, participate in the marathon rather than the sprint. And the more that you can feed into that kind of current awareness of you and your state, where are your resources going? Are they being used optimally? How can you bring them back to you so that they're working for you rather than, just a representation of how exhausted you are? And then by extension, can you manage your emotions such that you can also pace those? I think one of the things that's really fascinating about emotions is that they become, to some extent, the be all and end all of everything that we're experiencing in any given moment, right? They are so strong. And really, you are not your emotions, right? Your emotions are just a signpost to something, right? But they are transitory, they are fleeting if we allow them to be so. If we don't over identify with them, we can kind of just watch them move backwards and forwards. And the best we can use them for is actually a signpost to, further, deeper inner work. It's almost like you've realised you're allowed to be happy, Virgo. And that by not being so locked on the destination, not being in such a state of something that chaos magicians would refer to as lust of result, that actually you can take the time to look around and check in with yourself, but also check in with the situation that you're involved with, right? And adjust when necessary, not only the speed, but the direction of travel. This seems to be something that is really locking in with you this month. What's quite interesting is that the Three of Pentacles is here and on its side. Now I'm going to pull a card for that, but I do wonder if perhaps, Virgo, you've been a little shit at asking for help where help was available to be used. Tell me about this Three of Pentacles. Nine of Swords. I'm going to say almost certainly Four of Cups, yeah. Like, these are uncomfortable cards. Like, they're not fun cards at all. We've got the Nine of Swords, which I already spoke about, interestingly enough, and it's, it's anxiety, it's mental exhaustion, it's loss of perspective, it's it can be insomnia and actually mental illness really at its worst, but fundamentally coming down to this point that you have lost perspective on some sort of thing. And then we have the Four of Cups, which is a card of abandonment and rejection, sometimes rejecting, which may actually become maybe part of this, Virgo, where we are feeling kind of isolated, alone, and like there's nobody to help. But not so much in this card, but you see it in the Waite Smith. What we've got is somebody arms folded under a tree being offered a cup, an Ace of Cups, by, a sky hand, that's totally unseen by the character in the Four of Cups. And all of this is coming up under the idea that you could work together with other people to create something, whatever it is that you're trying to move towards. But like there can be more experience in the now, in allowing people to help, in allowing yourself to ask for help where it is needed, and come together. My partner once said to me, and I was so furious because he was absolutely right, and I hate it when that happens. I don't hate it, it's great, but I was having a strop at that point, and so when you're having a strop, the last thing that you want is anybody throwing logic at you. And what he said was, asking for help doesn't mean you're giving up. It means actually the opposite. And I was like, fuck it. I was in the middle of trying to be, self-pitying and all that other kind of stuff because I had to do so much stuff myself. And it was like, well, you don't have to. And whatever, whatever, what's the word that we're looking for? Whatever resistance that you have to asking for help, right? It's coming from a place that is kind of weird, because if you want to succeed, why would you not ask for help, right? That's the opposite of giving up. It's like, I really want to succeed at this, I'm going to ask for help. In your case, it could be, I really want to succeed at this, and so I need to be able to pace myself. If you had too much going on in the here and now, right, and you're like, I'm trying to get over there, it's not going to work. If there were people with whom you could share the load, you've all got much more distance in you, albeit potentially at a slower pace. But is it a slower pace? I mean, you could end up moving much faster. So part of what is happening here in March is the realization that your refusal to ask for help, your refusal to be reliant on anybody else, your refusal to show weakness. I mean, that's true for some of you. It's not true for all of you, but there's a showing weakness issue with some of you. Is only that if you perceive it to be that. She's a bit of a problematic figure now, but for a time I was a big fan of Amanda Palmer. I'm side-eyeing her now quite hard. If you don't know why, maybe go read some stuff about her. And she did a TED Talk years ago now called The Art of Asking, and she actually wrote a book about it. And I remember reading that entire book and being like, I could never do that. Like, good for her that it works, and I'm very impressed for her that it worked. But like, ew, no, I couldn't do that. Now, whether or not, you would take it to a full Amanda Palmer extent, the thrust of the book, just to be clear, and the thrust of the TED Talk, just to be clear, was that people want to help more than you think. It really gives something to people to help. But in order to give that to people as an act of service, you have to be prepared to stand there in your vulnerability and request it. Like, put that out there. You don't have to do everything on your own. You don't have to do everything alone. This could be the turning of a corner for you, Virgo. Because you're one of those signs, and I would say like you and Pisces and Cancer, that seem to be pre-programmed to be of service. The thing is, we're all here to be of service in some way or another, but we have to find a way that does not deplete us, right? Because when you are giving from the Ace of Cups, it's a self-generating thing. It doesn't cost anything for you, right? Your cup literally runneth over. So you got what you need in your cup, and whatever overflows can be directed towards other people, right? But Virgos and Pisces sometimes, and Cancer quite often, like, those are the three big ones, but it's true right across the board. Seem to lock in just on the being of service and push to the side over and over again where they factor in. Now, you seem to be factoring in your head and in your heart now in a way that you haven't done before. And it's such a small thing, it's such a simple thing, but it's a thing that changes everything. It's a thing that stops you from being in this position here and makes you feel like this over here. Ask people for help. Let people help you. Don't resent it. Don't be bitter about it. Don't any of those things. Like, it does give something to people when they help. and people want to do it. You know? It feels like, and this is particularly true if you're a Virgo ascendant, right? Because, as we said, all that Aries stuff that's happening is happening in your 8th house. That this could be a monumental month for a proper rebirth in the way that you show up in the world, right? Because what you're doing is almost like casting yourself into some sort of sacred flame, it feels to me, right? And burning off any resistance that you have towards asking for assistance for things. And in doing so, you are burning off whatever it was in your youth that told you you needed to do everything on your own. Now, I mean, there's obviously that more often than not comes from a place of trauma, right? You're either used to being rebuffed, being let down by people who said they would help and then didn't, or possibly used to the realization, got used to through multiple experiences, the fact that when you were looking around for someone to help, there wasn't anybody there. The world is different, circumstances are different, but you yourself are fundamentally different, Virgo. Right? Every cell in your body essentially refreshes every 7 years, right? It's a bit like the problem of Theseus's ship. This whole philosophy thing, right? If you replace every part of a ship with new bits, right, as it starts to break down and what, you replace it with new bits, and you use the old bits that you took off the ship to build another ship, at some point you're going to end up with 2 full ships. Which one of those is Theseus's ship? No. The material to make the original Theseus ship is in the old thing, right? But we just regenerated the stuff that was going on in there, so which one is it? You feel to me like you're being reborn, Virgo. And it doesn't have to be this hard, because you're allowed to be happy and you're allowed to pace yourself and you're allowed to do all sorts of things. It's about the here and now. It feels like this month to me you're cracking some sort of code, right? And all of this is swimming into your head and you're like, holy shit, I can do this thing, right? Whether it's the lunar eclipse or whether it's everything that's going on in Aries, whatever, right? This is a big month of change. And the more that you can submit to the change and allow it to rebirth you, the better. I think it sets you up very, very well for the rest of the year. This is really interesting, but I'm feeling the need to go really, really deep here. So I'm gonna draw a line under this here, and I'm gonna go do the extended. You're very welcome to join me over there if you would like to. You can do that on Circle. You can do that over at Selfie. I'd be delighted to see you in either place. But this feels profound, Virgo, because we're not talking about just shaking off the last 6 or 7 months. We're talking about shaking off something that's been dogging you since childhood. And you seem to be emerging not only refreshed, but completely reborn, with an entirely different attitude to the world. That makes you much more powerful when we start talking about things of being of service and whatnot. Magic. All right. I shall leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.